I would like to hear from your guys' perspective, what has changed in Gen AI for cybersecurity in the last year?
Maybe I'm surprised, maybe I'm not surprised, but I don't see a lot of real other movements. I think there's a lot of startups that are doing great things in the works around applying AI to solving security solutions.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I would say the big thing is just like moving through the phases. I feel like last year it was we have ideas about what might be possible, and this year it's like actually building. You have companies like Dropzone that are actually shipping and doing things, and there's a few others that are kind of more production ready like that. But I would say we're in a building phase. I would say last year was like the concept phase. This year's like the building phase. And there's some people who are actually rolling it out, but it's starting to become real.
Yeah, from my perspective, in terms of AI attacks, yeah, I think I personally have not been on the receiving end of a lot of these, but in my mind, and I think Caleb, you and I chatted about this to some extent, an approximation of AI being used for phishing is actually AI being used for sales outbound. And I would definitely, being a founder and CEO, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of sales outbound emails selling us all sorts of products and tools. A startup like us might
That's a
benefit
great
from.
point.
And I could definitely share, like within the last 12 months, I could tell more sales outbound emails are using AI because now a much larger portion of them will say, "Hey, Dropzone, you see, Edward, you guys are solving SOC pains, and we are doing the same, but for your HR teams or stuff like that." You can tell, like there are
It's more
okay,
customized.
yeah, the personalization is pretty impressive, and by looking at the degree of personalization of these sales outbound emails, I could tell the AI or Gen AI technology for phishing is probably evolving at like an equal pace. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, using Gen AI to generate phishing emails is actually not that different from using Gen AI to generate a hyper personalized sales outreach email.
Has anyone, obviously going to the agentic sort of word, um, does anyone know if there are open source projects that have done let's use an agent to do lateral movement internal in the network? Has that been released yet?
There's automated red team stuff, so it wouldn't specifically be lateral movement, but it would be like this, yeah, find,
Feel
expand.
like QR definition of agent, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
I am using a localized model or something along these lines says, and I'm doing this specifically on how to navigate and obtain new access internal in the network. Yeah. Like, has anyone built that?
Yeah, I've seen a few. I would say they're a bit nascent, like not super far along, just because it's so difficult. I mean, it's hard enough for humans, so it's going to be really hard for the early agents as well.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple founders working on AI pen testers or AI, red teamers, where the consensus I've shared is multi-hop or lateral movement is coming soon. But the challenge with lateral movement is a little bit similar to fuzzing. Like, yes, you can brute force your way by running through every single known exploit or lateral movement techniques under the sun that's known to man. But most humans don't do that, right? We look at, we run Nmap, we have intuitions. Okay, if I see these ports being open, and then I look at maybe whether I can get the Apache version. If I see, NTLN, maybe that unlocks certain techniques. Uh, I I personally haven't seen, a truly agentic solutions that can capture this kind of intuition, or you can say it's essentially heuristic based search space pruning on the lateral movement techniques.
Yeah,
But I have no doubt in the fullness of time, like somebody should be able to figure it out.
yeah, especially if you add the requirement of also don't be super loud. Don't just blast your entire signature list because you're going to get seen by the defense.
Yeah, my thesis was once you start seeing good open source projects that do this well, then you'll start seeing real attackers start probably using this in scale. But actually, it looks like people are saying PentestGPT, and Joseph Young has some sort of thing that I guess he's building that does this. But it does look like there are some things out there. I feel like I remember using PentestGPT in the first. That's been out for a bit, right? Like I feel like almost
Yeah, like 23. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember it was neat, but far from what I would consider to be the kind of thing at which you would plant. After I've compromised the system, plant it autonomously, go and run and move yourself through nodes. I think it was far from. It was more like I would call it co-pilot for a pen tester. It felt like.
Yeah, agreed.
Is where do you guys see kind of Gen AI for cybersecurity being at the end of the year?
By the end of this year, we should start seeing some pretty substantial products and services coming out from AI that are at the level of, hey, revolutionary, disruptive in what we've done. If we don't start seeing it at the end of this year or beginning of next year, is maybe AI way overhyped for what we thought.
Yeah, by the end of this year, yeah, I feel like people are still. It depends on the type of company, right? It depends. Is it a startup? Is it a very large company? Is it like a risk averse type of industry, like financial services? I think they're going to be some of the slowest people to implement agents, especially without human in the loop. So it all depends on the industry, but I would say that by the end of the year, and definitely into next year, we're going to have significantly increased team sizes on the defensive side that are actually, AI workers. And I think a big type of that implementation will be like with Dropzone, where it could take an alert and do and actually research that alert, similar to what a human would do. But you need that for so many other things in addition to SOC, right? You need it for active investigation threats. You need it for incident response. The way I like to think about it is we need eyes and brains and hands, and we don't have nearly enough of those. And so I think by the beginning of next year or somewhere around there, a lot more people will be actually implementing that stuff.
Previously, but why attackers are actually not using AI maybe as prevalently and intensively as maybe a lot of us has previously anticipated. Do you guys think obviously the new open source models with maybe less alignment will actually change that trend?
Yeah, let me give a more, I guess, aggressive answer, similar to the one I gave before. I think the attacks, there won't be a marker in the attack that says powered by AI. The attacks are going to be the same. So what I think we should actually look for is the volume of attacks that we're already getting and how effective they are. So social engineering, does that suddenly get more effective? Does the volume suddenly go up? Does it suddenly get easier for someone to hide on the network or to pivot from place to place once they have access to the network? I would say we should look for the normal things that attackers are doing and just look for volume and quality of attack. And then if that starts to spike this year and next year, then I think that might be the evidence of AI.
I would imagine, like, I've always thought the first place that I think people are going to use AI is not in the execution of the attack, but in the identifying of the exploits. Like, it's a clear win to use AI in finding ODAs, right, in binaries, and taking and harvesting all the old binaries and images built into routers, tech, let's say supply chain areas, and then finding the exploits in those. I mean, if I were an attacker, that's the thing that I would be building a mass amount of arsenal with. And actually, do I use AI to execute the attack itself from a discovery perspective? Maybe, but I'm really looking at arming my sets of people with a huge arsenal of capability that we've discovered through AI.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. I want to follow up on that. So, I got a friend who's interviewing at a startup, and it's a medical startup, and what they're doing is they find all the research that kind of had some quality to it, but it didn't get pursued fully. It didn't get fully funded, but they actually had a result. Like they combined these two molecules together, and maybe this was 24 years ago. And it turns out that that thing actually did this thing to this type of cancer. Turns out there's hundreds of thousands of these papers that haven't been funded. And this really reminds me of what you were saying, Caleb. There's, hundreds of thousands of these pieces of things that worked in the past. What if you just, like you said, collect it all together and tell the AI, go harvest really interesting things out of here and, do that manually or do it automated. It's the same sort of concept.
Yeah, I think, same as, what we do in defense, it's AI helped you do things at scale. Not just about the automation, but being able to analyze and identify the issues, to me feels just like a no-brainer to go at her. It's easy, it's confined, it's you can repeat it, and you're going to get great results. I think doing that is like many people we know on the good side is already doing this. Everyone I think from the bad side has been doing this for a while.
Okay, experts. Question for you all. From your perspective, where's the most overlooked risk or opportunity right now when it comes to Gen AI's security?
I'll go with an opportunity. So going back to the many eyes concept, I think the opportunity is that as defenders, I think we've spent years offloading things that we know that we can't possibly look at. So maybe we got tons of log data that has to go from like S3 to Glacier or something, or there's just terabytes of data that just cannot be looked at. And I feel like a big opportunity here is to be able to look at the other like 90%, because our team was just too small. So we had to categorize what exactly we could spend time on. And I think it's a good opportunity to just re-explore the entire space and say, what will this help us look at that we couldn't see before?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's actually maybe less to do with, hardcore traditional cybersecurity, but more around operationally. I think organizational context. Regardless which branch or specialization of cybersecurity we operate in, understanding the environment makes a huge difference. And traditionally, that has been a very big challenge because nobody can read every single Slack message. Nobody can read every single ticket or email that has been sent. But now we have the technology that can realistically read every single email, every single calendar invite, Slack message, and making some of those, historically unaccessible context accessible to the security team. I think that could be a really big needle mover, even though it does not involve kind of applying Gen AI of traditional cybersecurity specializations like log analysis or fuzzing or code reviews.
I was just going to say, a lot last year I did a presentation on, what I think the positive optimistic view on what AI brings to security. And I called these sort of the 3 C's. I called it what AI will bring to us that we didn't have before is coverage. So Daniel mentioned this, like, hey, if I had 1,000 AI junior engineers, what would security people, what would I point them to? You would point them at all the things you never could do and get access to. The other C that I pointed to was communication, right? Around sort of, hey, how do we communicate? How do we generate better reports? How do we do communication in a better way? And then the third is what Edward mentioned, context, which is around understanding the world and understanding how the environment is, and that allows you to make better, higher confidence decisions. So like a great example that I put in is, today when you look at things like detection and response, you'll get an alert that says, hey, someone SSH'd into this box. And you're like, is that a problem or is that not a problem? Well, if you understood the context and said, oh, well, we know who initiated the SSH. We also see the Slack channel where someone asked Bob to go initiate the SSH. We also see the Jira ticket for the problem Bob's trying to solve. We now know this is not an attack and not something you need to be worried about. We can mute it, right? And I think like that kind of context is going to change everything in what we do in security.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful because I know you and I, Caleb, have been thinking about asset management forever, and it's foundational to doing security, and we haven't had it, and it's really hard to get, and there's people trying, but I wonder if this might actually move the needle some.
Yeah, like there is some pretty, for example, I know of a portfolio company that I'm working with that's doing some really fascinating things around, to the point where, hey, today, the way you think about things is you need to consolidate, right? You think about anything, logs, detection, other, but if you had 5,000 engineers, do you need to consolidate? And you just allow them to go do the things where the information lies, where the problem is. Can they investigate and do the things where you don't need to consolidate anymore? Because you can actually get the coverage you need by deploying the armies you have. And that I think is a very different world that was not possible.